If we were to look at the shroud, this is exactly what we would see if it was displayed at St. John's Cathedral in Turin, Italy. What we see is a cloth that's 14 feet long and it's about 4 feet wide. In the middle of the cloth, we can see the image of a man that's front and back, meaning they took that cloth and laid it on the sepulcher, they placed him on his back, and they pulled the opposite end over. So they enveloped him in the shroud. We have to understand with the shroud and the wounds, that the wounds that we can see, the wounds that are visible, are there because we have the technology to see those wounds. We haven't been able to see all of the wounds. There are wounds under the skin. There's internal bleeding from the scourging that we can't see, which would cause tremendous pain, bleeding under the skin, especially in the back and the chest area. We also just discovered about 10 years ago, these scratches and these contusions that are only on the calves, which show that a Roman virgate or flexible stick was used. That was missed in prior investigations because we have new technology coming out that we're able to see new and fresh wounds. We're going to see new wounds come out as our technology gets better. But what we have seen is that this man, it was like a car wreck. You know, I mean, the brutality of the beating and these dumbbell-shaped open wounds and these puncture wounds. Josephus tells us it was the horrible flagrum. It's a wooden handle that has 2 or 3 leather straps, and at the end of it are little balls of lead. They're shaped like dumbbells. They would use this to lash him from the neck to the ankles. There's all kinds of different layers of the suffering caused by these wounds that we don't all the time see on the shroud because of technology. We have new technology coming out. We have new wounds that are showing up. The dislocated shoulder, that is a new wound that wasn't noticed, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So new things are coming out, which is pointing to the fact that this body was just, it was just completely brutalized in so many ways. And we still don't see everything yet. Technology is getting better. So we're finding new things. In August of 2024, Father Spitzer, who is a blind priest, but he was also a chemist, worked with Dr. Caro from Italy. Dr. Caro noticed that on the image, not the blood, but the image, it gave off radiation. He used a technique called WAX, wavelength X-ray system. What they calculated was it took a burst of radiation, light radiation, that scorched an image the width of a human hair. They calculated that it was 6 to 8 billion watts of energy. That's the equivalent of 500,000 searchlights coming out of every cell of the body for 1/40 billionth of a second. And the radiation was so strong that it changed the nanoparticles of the material and kept it from disintegrating. We don't even have that technology on Earth. Only God. This presentation that I offer people is definitely the medical part of it, the historical part of it, and some drama. I have a life-size cross, and I stand in front of that cross, and I show how a crucifixion victim would have to pull up to breathe, have to pull up to talk. So I give that display to people. This is Dr. Frederick Zugibe. In the 1980s, he used to crucify his patients. They would volunteer. He would put them on a makeshift cross in the same position that the man of the shroud was in. What he discovered was that while they were hanging, they would get severe muscle spasms in their calves and their thighs, and they would have to pull up. Then they would get muscle spasms in their chest, their arms, and their back, and they would have to drop. This is what the hand of the shroud man would look like, nailed to the cross. He would constantly have to do this to relieve these muscle spasms and the pain and to be able to breathe. But then to speak, he would have to pull up. And what's the first thing he says? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And then he would drop. but then he would have to keep doing this motion. I demonstrate that so that people have a visual of, you didn't just hang on the cross. I mean, you literally had to try to survive for those hours on that cross, and it's totally different than what we see. People don't realize. I also carry the crossbeam to show people how he would have carried it, which is very different than what we see in movies or art. So I put that little bit of drama in there so that people can identify and relate to, this is happening to a real person. This is how the man of the shroud would carry his crossbeam. High on the right, low on the left, because this end of the beam would be tied to the beam of the prisoner in the front. It's handcuffs, they can't strike the soldiers. When I stand in front of an audience, I never know who's going to be there. And I get all types of people, young, old, different races, different creeds. And I've had people in the audience that were Jewish. And they're on the fence about, is he the Messiah or not? And I hope that maybe that sparked something in them. It planted a seed. I've had people that are not Catholic there. I hope that sparks something with them as well. My mission is to try to bring as many people to Christ that I can through his burial shroud, through his passion, his resurrection, his perfect atonement. We can see that this man is covered in wounds, front and back. I'm helping bring people into the faith. And I know it's not me. It's him speaking through me. It's him working through me. I'm just the vessel that he's using. But I've now taken it upon myself that I need to bring this awareness to people that this is what Christ endured. This is what he suffered, because we've sanitized it. We've cleaned it up, and people need to see the truth. So I feel like my mission is to bring that truth and to unveil to them the shroud and the passion through the shroud. We were founded by the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. So we need to tell the truth of the passion of Jesus. We've sanitized crucifixes. We need to see the wounds that the man suffered for our perfect atonement. And you're going to see them in these slides. And 1979, it was around Easter time, there was a National Geographic program, and it had the Shroud of Turin. And as an only child, I'd watched it with my parents. And I remember turning around and looking at them and saying, that's the face of God. I know that's his face. So I've believed in it ever since. I kept up with the shroud even through the 80s. Even 1988, when they did the Carbon-14, I watched a program. It was called In Search of Historic Jesus. And it was a documentary on the shroud. And they talked about the wounds and the burst of light that left the image. And I knew it was him. So all through the years, I just kept reading and studying. I know that in the late 1980s, they stopped printing books on the shroud. So whatever books they would print, I would get them. And I would read them, and I would look at the pictures, and I would study those pictures, and I would compare it to the things that I had knew before. And then I met Brother Joseph Pounds, who had studied the shroud. He had worked with Monsignor Ricci. And I worked with him for 10 years. I would go to his room and study the shroud. And he was just an encyclopedia set of knowledge. And I mean, he really opened my eyes to the medical part of the shroud, which is, I kind of do more of the medical part and not so much the history. And that was all based on Brother Joseph Pounds. Dr. Pierre Barbet was a French surgeon. He studied the shroud in the 1930s. And he would take cadavers and he would crucify them. He wanted to see the effect of crucifixion. What he would do is he would take, and this is a replica crucifixion nail, he would take this and he would drive it through the palm of the hand. What he discovered was that it was 220 pounds of pressure on each shoulder, and because there's only tendons and ligaments, the nail would rip and the corpse would fall off. I went to a house party with a Catholic friend of mine. And there was another gentleman there. We ended up just out of the blue talking about the shroud. And he said, I have a friend of mine. He said, in Gaithersburg, his father used to talk about the shroud and give lectures. Maybe I can connect you. I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I called Mr. Rabel. I said, I understand your dad used to talk about the shroud. He said, yeah. He said, I'm doing a presentation. I said, well, I made replicas. I said, could I use them in your presentation? He said, sure. So I went. He talked about the history of it, and he kind of threw me under the bus. He said, I'm going to introduce you to Jim. He made these replicas. He also has studied the shroud. So he called me up in front of everybody, and I talked about what I knew. I talked about Brother Joe, and I liked it. I felt comfortable with it. I felt good doing it. And I felt like, wow, this is something I could do full time. So I reached out to other parishes. I reached out to 50. 15 contacted me and said, yeah, we'd love to have you do a presentation on the shroud. That was 2022. And this past Lent, I did almost 30. So God changed my direction from a personal trainer to talking about the Shroud of Turin and bringing that knowledge that Brother Joe gave me to, I couldn't tell you how many people I've spoken in front of. This is a replica of what that cap of thorns would look like. The process of starting was very small. I only had a few displays. And when I was working with this other gentleman, I think I only had like 4 or 5. And then when I decided to go out on my own, through that summer, I made more displays because I wanted something people to look at. I wanted a visual. I wanted something that people could identify with. So not only the crown of thorns, but I did the display of carrying the cross because we think he carried this whole thing on one shoulder. So I wanted people to see that, no, this isn't how he carried it. And they would pick him up and they would continue to drag him through. So as he's walking, left knee, right knee, and face first. It took about 3 years to make all those displays. And I was a perfectionist with them. And if they didn't work, I'd take them apart and restart and do them over until they were right. The whole thing was a work in progress. And it was a very slow process of getting to where I am now. And every once in a while, I'm still not happy with some of the displays. I'll go back and redo them because I don't think they look right. I want it to be as perfect as I can because I'm portraying our Lord, right? I'm bringing our Lord to people. So to me, it's got to be near perfect. And so I need to also rely on him with that too and realize it's not going to be perfect. But it's like he said in the Divine Mercy, it's not the colors, it's not the brushstroke, it's my mercy. And I need to rely on that sometimes. So I still catch myself. I'm also that work in progress. So Jesus, his everyday garment would be the Jewish tallis. He would wear it on the outside of his robes. Out of all of this, that I really want people to walk away from is actually 2 things. I am loved and I am worthy. There is no greater love than one who lays down his life for another. You are loved, every single one of you. You are worthy, every single one of you. That this God that took on human flesh would do this for me as if I were the only person alive at that time. That's what I want people to walk away with and appreciating what the true passion really was. Josephus, the Jewish historian, tells us that the Romans would crucify people on a capital T or a tau. These crosses would be low to the ground, not the tall, lofty crosses that we see in movies. Every presentation that I do, I say a prayer to the Blessed Mother and ask her to bring people to her Divine Son and to open up a door possibility for me. And every single presentation, we get what we need to live off of. So God provides, and I'm much happier doing this than I ever was working at the gym. And I thought I was happy doing that. But I mean, with this, I find fulfillment because I'm helping people find Jesus. And in the world today, we certainly need him crucified. This is a thorn from the crown that was on the head of Jesus Christ. I live off of donations and the kindness that people offer me. It wasn't easy to get here. It took a lot of trust, and I'm still not completely there yet. But just know that God will guide you to where he wants you to be and where he needs you to be if you stop putting up the fight. And I had to learn to stop putting up that fight. I mean, he dragged me screaming and kicking like every good kid should do with their parent, but he didn't give up. He kept pulling me and I kept resisting until finally I was like, okay, I have hit rock bottom. We had no income coming in on my side after COVID. And when I got to the bottom, there's no place else to go but to look up. And guess who was standing there? Him, the whole time, with his hand outstretched. And I finally took the initiative to be like, okay, here's my hand. I need you to help me. And he did. So take that from me. Somebody who was at rock bottom can get to where I needed to be, where he wanted me to be, if you just trust that he'll lead you there, and he will. In 1898, Secondo Pia was invited to the Vatican to take the first photographs of the shroud. He took a picture of this, and when he developed it, it became that. This is the original photograph that Secondo Pia took. This mission, it has really touched me in the way of seeing people change. One lady, I'll never forget her. She came up to me, older lady. She said, "You have forever changed my Good Friday. It'll never be the same as long as I'm alive." And that meant a lot to me because I feel like then they're getting the message. I want to take this on a global scale. I want everybody around the world to hear this. I want to take Jesus crucified, the passion, the resurrection, the suffering, or the man of the shroud. I want so many eyes and ears to hear this, hearts to hear this, souls to hear this. I mean, globally, around the world. Everybody needs to hear this. Everybody needs to hear Jesus crucified, and they need to see exactly what the man of the shroud did for our perfect atonement. He is the Paschal Lamb. He is the promised Messiah, and the whole world needs to hear it. If we look at this image, there's approximately 372 bloodstains on the Shroud of Turin. I have a website, shroudpassionunveiled.com, and it gives just a little bit of a bio, and then it also gives you future presentations of where I'll be if anybody wants to check that out. And I do regularly update it, so I will add some of the pictures of the slides and stuff so people have something to look at. But yeah, definitely go to the website and check it out.